Hello, everybody. Hope you guys are all having a great day. Thanks for joining us again for May's event. We're going to talk today about some of the features that our scan tools have that help to make your life a little bit easier and better. We're also going to give you ways to update your scan tool so they make sure that you can keep it up. A couple things. There is a poll question. We utilize these polls to help improve the product, right? So your feedback gives us, information that maybe we change the tools around to make some of this stuff a little bit easier for you. So today's is what's one of the hardest to find features on your scan tool. You're looking for more service information. You're looking for code definitions and topology, data display. By data display, we literally mean the information. If you get a code and you want to look at the mass airflow sensor readings, things like that. Do you think it's hard to find, easy to find? So go ahead and answer that question for us, help us out, and make the product better for you guys. I'd also love to see where you guys are checking in from. So in the chat box, feel free to say, hey, checking in from Florida, from I've seen Michigan, I've seen a couple places. So I'd love to see that. Hopefully you got some decent weather. I'm in the northeast mid-Atlantic area, I guess. I live in Delaware, and we've had a rough winter. So it's still not even getting real warm yet. This morning I had to wear a coat this morning. I was not happy for mid-May. So I really want to appreciate you guys joining us. The chat box, if you have any questions, excuse me, during this, please feel free to type them over there. I will answer them as we go along if I can. And also, we're going to send you, or we're going to show you a email address. So we created an email address since the last month's seminar, tech questions at Launch Tech USA. Maybe some guys are a little hesitant to type something in the chat box. They think maybe I'll ever think I'm stupid or this is a dumb question or whatever. So if you have questions, you can send them to us. This is answered at all times. It's now live. It comes right to my inbox. So I'll be more than happy to go ahead and answer your question via email for you if you have anything. Obviously, for technical support and things like that, we do have a call center that can call you out and they can remote into your tool and stuff like that. This is more, questions you might have about the tool and things like that, or maybe even a feature you want to see added. So feel free to use that. So today we're going to start off with one feature of our tool, which is service information. We have a feature of the tool called X431 Fix, and that feature allows you to get the service information right on the tool. So I think it's one of our best features because you think about if you get a code or you get something, you might have to run to another computer in another part of the shop to open up your service information, whether it's Mitchell ALLDATA, Motor, whatever, Identifix. Here we have it on the tool, so you can actually go in and get the most common fixes for that particular code, wiring diagrams, all that kind of stuff, technical service bulletins, without having to leave the scan tool. So you can start looking at that stuff and maybe help with your diagnosis. So we're going to play a quick little video. I think it lasts, give or take, about 10 minutes about the features of this tool. So we'll go ahead and start the video now.
Today, we're going to concentrate on the Launch X431 Fix program. And this is going to be a program that's going to help you with information. It's going to be tied into the vehicle you're working on, and it will go ahead and give you technical support at the fender working on the vehicle. It's going to save you a lot of time. So let's go ahead and get to it. As you can see on the scan tool, we're hooked up to a Chevrolet Silverado 1500. And it's a 2012 with a V8 5.3 liter. Now, what we want to do is look at how X431 Fix can assist you in solving a customer's concerns quicker. So let's get into it. The first thing we're going to do is, as we should, we're going to look at all of the modules on the vehicle, go ahead and see what kind of DTCs we have in the modules. And to do that, all we have to do is go ahead and touch the button that says Health Report. And as we go through the Health Report, we're going to check every module on the vehicle, make sure that it's communicating, make sure it's equipped, and also make sure that there are no DTCs in it. If there's DTCs, we're going to get a DTC amount. Well, look at that. We've got an ECM pictured here, and it's in red, if you notice, first of all, and it has 3 DTCs in it. So we do show a situation here of all the modules. We only have 1 module with DTCs in it. We have all modules communicating on the different buses, which is good. So at this particular point, we're not going to go ahead and look for any other problems in this network. We're going to go ahead and look right to the ECM with the 3 DTCs. So here we go. All we have to do is touch, of course, that ECM with the 3 DTCs. We're going to look at the DTCs, and here's our system information on those particular DTCs. Now, the important thing to remember is you can't know everything on vehicles today. All the vehicles are different. We got to rely on great information sources to go ahead and help us through. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at this P0442 code, and we're going to go and touch X431 Fix. So here I go, X431 Fix. Touched it, and it's going to go ahead and load. You want to keep in mind that you have to be online for this service to function. If you notice what came up here, we've got 4 results for the P0442. Now, keep in mind, if we take a look at it, we have a 2012 Chevrolet Silverado with the 5.3. So the scan tool automatically did the search and populated off of the vehicle we're working on, which is fantastic. Big time saver. You don't need to go in a separate information system and look up that vehicle. So we've got 4 results here right now on that DTC. We're going to go to technical service bulletins. There's 3 results there. So we're just going to touch on technical service bulletins. Here are all the TSBs that are up on that particular vehicle. Now notice we also have diagnostic trouble code support, so right there at the fender we can go ahead and have our support information to repair this particular vehicle. We're going to go look at TSBs first, because obviously if it took the engineers a little while to go ahead and figure out a solution and they came up with it, it's going to take us a little longer to figure out that solution. They've got a lot of resources we don't have. So we're going to revert to the knowledge of the engineers at GM to figure out what's going on. So we're just going to touch that TSB, and here is the complete TSB that we're going to look at that we can scroll through. So this TSB refers to obviously a problem we have with water intrusion on a valve. And if you notice, it lists all the vehicles that are involved in this, and it does include our vehicle we're working on here with that DTC. It goes through the complete procedure, talks about the older valve and the new replacement valve, which is a sealed unit, so water intrusion cannot be a case of a problem any longer. It tells us how to install it and how to go through the whole procedure. Now, this is a real time saver. If the criteria in the TSB meet the DTC criteria and such, obviously we have the information in our hands immediately while we're at the vehicle. So big time saver. We don't have to go to separate information system across the shop, etc., to go ahead and get this information. We can go ahead and get the components we need notified for the repair and such, and get ready to get rolling on it. Now, keep in mind, we do have DTCs for any of the particular trouble codes we have in X431 Fix. The other thing it does for us is it opens up for us any kind of other service information on the given vehicle. And it's very nice because it's already keyed to that vehicle. We don't have to worry about getting online and going ahead and obviously putting all the vehicle information in there and making sure we have the right information, etc. Let's say while we're doing this repair, we want to look at some wiring situations. Well, what we can do in this particular case we would like is then go to wiring diagrams. So I'm going to just scroll the wiring diagrams, touch on wiring diagrams, and it's going to go ahead and open up just like a regular information system. And we're going to go basically to system in this particular case. I'm going to look it up by system, and I want to look at engine wiring diagram in this particular case. So I'm going to go ahead and pick engine. I want to go to fuel controls. So engine fuel controls, we can go ahead and isolate to the point we need to isolate it to. Here is then your complete electrical wiring diagram. You can go ahead and make it bigger, you can shrink it, you can do whatever you want with it. You can look at the whole diagram, so very easy to use, and keeping in mind, we're doing this from the vehicle remotely with our X431 launch Throttle 3. Big time saver. Now, let's go ahead and back out of here for just a minute. And we're going to get out of here just by hitting the arrow backward, okay? And we can go out the way we came in. And if we wanted to, we could go to any one of our other codes. Hey, we've got an engine oil pressure sensor performance. If you haven't seen that issue before, what's causing it? Who knows? There's so many different cars out there, you can't know it all. So we're going to go ahead and just touch the X431 Fix button, and let's see what it has available for us. Here we go. Diagnostic trouble codes, of course, to go ahead and find out what's going on using regular result menus and such. We're going to go to technical service bulletins just to make sure, right there at the fender. We're going to go to the TSB. Here we go. Okay. And this has, of course, to do with our P0521 setting after an oil change and or low pressure indicated on the instrument panel. And here's all the information in the TSB for us to go ahead and service that particular concern. Okay. So very big time savings once again. If there's a trouble code that you haven't seen and such, the X431 is there for you to help you out with diagnosing that vehicle from the fender. Now keep in mind, we're wireless here totally. So if you want to go do some diagnostic checks under the hood and such with your meter and unit, you're good to go. A good tip here, okay, would be to go ahead and have your diagnostic equipment available. And so you go ahead and look up the information in the X431 Fix, and you could go ahead very simply and have your equipment ready to go, and you're seamlessly diagnosing the vehicle, saving a bunch of time. The boss, your customer, is going to go ahead and appreciate that. Now, let's say you've got other work to do on the vehicle. For instance, let's say we have a situation maybe where we might be doing some brake work on the vehicle also. I'm going to just click on brakes over here real quick, and what I'm going to do is go to specifications. We're doing brake service on this vehicle also. There's the specifications. So if I want any of the specifications as far as calipers, lining, rotor, you name it, okay, that stuff will be displayed right here. So not only does X431 Fix give you the information to help you diagnose and repair the DTCs, looking at TSBs, etc., but it's a complete source of automotive information for that particular vehicle. And remember, the beauty of this thing is you hook it up to the vehicle, the good old scan tool gets you hooked up to the information system on its own, and you're right where you need to be to effectively fix the vehicle. That counts for a lot. That's why this scan tool is one of the leading scan tools in the industry. And it's good. You need to use it for its full ability. And that's one of the things here that you want to get very comfortable with. Please go ahead and use this if you have some time on a vehicle to see how it functions and works, because when you have that problem vehicle, you'll be ready to go and you'll fix that problem vehicle in record time versus what it would take without the help of the tool.
So, hopefully you gathered some ways that you can utilize the service information. So we have, the code assist on there that explains exactly about that code, some ways that the code is set, which can help you in figuring out your diagnosis. We have, code assist, which is going to give you the information, right, about that particular code, the most popular fixes, any TSBs and things like that. So I can't tell you how important it is to look at this information every time. Nowadays when I, work on a car, I pretty much start with service information before I actually start working on the car. Once I, get that code or whatever is in the system, my next step is service information, whether it's reading description and operation of the system, like an EVAP system. Sometimes things are different than maybe what you're used to. Maybe the vent valve is normally closed or normally open. You got to find that out. If you just assume because, most of the vehicles are this way and this one happens to be different than that, you could make an error. And TSBs. I really can't stress enough. I listen to a lot of our level 2 calls, and sometimes I take some of these calls, and it's sometimes I feel bad for people because they've maybe have wasted so much time. We had a gentleman, it was about maybe 2 months ago, he was having issues with the TPMS tool, and he was no matter what he did, he's like, I've replaced the sensor 3 times, I've done this, and no matter what, I can put 150 psi in it or make it flat, and it still reads 19 psi. And um, as he was telling me the story, I was like, I bet you anything I know what vehicle this is. It turns out there was a TSB out for a reflash that fixed the problem. So, I can't imagine how much time he wasted breaking down tires, swapping sensors, reprogramming the sensors. God only knows how many times. And the issue was actually a flash of the module that fixed this problem. So, looking at TSBs, looking at that service information, very rarely are you going to have a problem that somebody in the country, if not the world, hasn't already experienced themselves. And there's a lot of companies out there that track this stuff, um, and companies like Identifix, and we utilize Identifix in the tool to help build that database. So you may not have Identifix a subscription to it. I know it's quite expensive. I know it's about $260 to $300 a month, and that's a lot of money for some shops. But that Code Assist is fueled by Identifix, so you get it as part of the tool. It's one of the things that subscription update covers, right? So when you look at updating your tool on a yearly basis, and you think, wow, it's expensive to drop $800 or $900 on an update for my scan tool each year. But keep in mind, you're getting some features in this tool that add value that you maybe don't have to spend money on in other places, and service information, or a second set of service information. If you have, say, a Mitchell or All Data, our X431 Fix Info is fueled by Motor, which is the biggest database in the world. They have the most information in their database of anybody. So again, a great tool. So if there's any questions about that, feel free to drop them in the chat box. I'll be more than happy to answer them as I see fit. So one of the next things that we're going to show a video on is how to properly update your tool. We have updates of our tool almost on a daily basis. Not every system, but I just actually used my Throttle 5 this morning to connect to a vehicle, and I hadn't used it since probably Friday. And there was about 17 updates in the tool for various OEMs. There was a firmware update for the VCI, and it's really important that this is done, with regularity. A lot of our call center calls, when we start talking to someone and they're having a minor issue, and we find out that it's been a while since they've updated their tool, there's a firmware update that fixes the problem that they're having. So I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you we sometimes do an update. We whatever, we add a test for a Nissan, and it comes in the Nissan software update, and then we find out that it caused a glitch, right? I mean, it happens with, any of you guys have Android or Apple phones. You update your iOS and your Apple, and then a couple of your apps don't work right, and then there's a patch to fix that. So, and we have the same problem. Sometimes a minor glitch or something wrong in the code, it changes something, and then a feature doesn't work. By updating that tool, we're usually on it, and within 48 hours, the problem is fixed. So make sure you're keeping your tool updated as much as possible. I think last year on our ProLine tools, we had 900 and it's either 953 or 958 updates. So as I said, 356 days, the 365 days in a year, that's, almost 3 a day, give or take. So, update your tools. So the next video that's going to play is on how to get those updates into your tool.
Okay, in this video, we're going to be talking about updating your scan tool. Now, this is very, very important. Obviously, especially if you have a problematic vehicle, keeping in mind that in today's world, a lot of things are repaired or fixed with software, and when that software is reinstalled in the vehicle, it may change the diagnostic flow of that vehicle a little bit as far as the scan tool is concerned. So you should always ensure that you have the latest update for your scan tool in there. Now, it's not uncommon in today's world to get 2 or 3 updates sometimes within a month on a particular vehicle package. So it's always a great idea to go ahead and get on a regular, normal cadence with your updates. Now, 2 things important on updates. Number 1, pick a day. Monday night might work very good. You're back from business, obviously, over the weekend. When you close down the store on Monday, go ahead and hook your scan tool up for updates. Let it run the updates when you leave that night. It doesn't take that long to do an update with this scan tool. It's got a very speedy processor in it. The limiting factor may be your actual internet speeds. So you want to keep in mind, depending on your internet speed, it could take some time to update because some of the files will be rather large. A lot of the import companies like BMW possibly and such may have very lengthy updates. You can look at the update size, and we'll show you that in a few minutes and kind of go through the procedure. Now, the other thing that's really important is if you're working on a problem vehicle, go ahead and look for updates before you work on that vehicle. Let's say you're working on a Fiat, and that Fiat is really a tough problem to fix. It's been around town a few times. Well, you owe it to yourself to put the latest update in your scan tool. It may have came out this morning on that Fiat, and it may solve the issue that you're concerned about. So let's go ahead and remember, we can also do an update on one vehicle manufacturer also, which is very quick and easy. You can do that right before you go ahead and hook up even. So we're going to take you through both of those procedures. So let's get over to the scan tool and get it done. Okay, we're at the scan tool, and as far as the scan tool goes, we're coming from the opening screen on the tool. So we're going to hit X431, which is our actual scan tool on this tablet. And it's going to load up. We're loaded up, as you can see right now. Now, if you notice, it's showing software update, and that software update requires or shows that there are 14 updates available on this particular tool right now. And so we're going to go ahead and just touch the software update screen. It's going to refresh. Remember, you have to be online to do this because it's got to go online to the server to see what new updates are available. The scan tool doesn't just automatically say we have so many updates. It's got to actually go to the server, and the server will let it know what updates are available. Then it'll display those updates for us. So we've got a whole list here. They're in alphabetical order. So we've got Audi, we've got basically BMW and such, and we can scroll up and see all the updates that are available. Now, some of the updates are fairly small, 17 megabyte, 11.9 megabyte on Subaru, Suzuki, 14.1. If you take a look at it though, we have some updates in here, like for instance, BMW, Rolls-Royce, and Mini. We have 1,579.1 megabytes of information, so that's actually pretty darn big. In the column on the end, it says what's new, and it lets you know what is going to be changed in that particular update. So you might find out also that, hey, if you're working on, for instance, on a Renault and there's a ABS issue that you're working with, you know, there's a big update in there for ABS. So you want to get that loaded, obviously, before you start working on the ABS, so you have all the tools necessary that are up to date to fix that vehicle as quickly as possible. So let's go ahead and do an update. Now, once again, you have to be online, okay? Good internet connection is helpful, obviously, and quicker. So we're going to go ahead and pick one area. Let's go ahead and say we're going to be working on a Subaru. So we want to make sure we have the latest update in for Subaru. So what I'm going to do is just touch on the block that says Subaru, and if you notice, the block is a red check block now, and I can unselect it if I want. So if I unselect, it goes away. I'm going to go ahead and pick Subaru again, so I check that block. Now, right now, Subaru is the only option I have in here for updating this tool. So let's go through the update procedure to show you how easy it is to update. So all we've got to do at this particular point is press update. We'll only update the categories that we have chosen at this point. So we go ahead and hit update, and here's our update happening. And if you notice how quick and easy it is, we download the update first, then we install it into the scan tool, and it shows us that's installed successfully. We have a message up there that says software has been installed successfully, of course, or successfully installed. We're good to go, so we hit OK. Not a problem. Okay, so that takes us out. Now, if you notice, we are down to 13 updates right now. Now, let's say it's Monday night and you want to update your complete scan tool. So let's go through that procedure now. It's pretty much the same procedure, and it's pretty quick and easy. We've got some huge files in here, remember, some big updates. So let's go and touch Software Update. Once again, it's going to refresh and pull the latest updates from the server. So here's all the latest updates. Now, these are all the ones that are available right now, and that's currently up to date from when I went ahead and got on this screen. If you want to see what's going on, you can always hit refresh manually, which I just did. It's now going to query the server, and it's going to come up with the current list of updates that are available right now. So I'm going to go ahead at this point and pick Select All. Now remember, Select All, this is a huge update. So if you notice, all the blocks are checked. So what we're going to be doing is updating the whole scan tool. So what I'm going to do right now, very simply, is hit Update. When I hit Update, you'll notice the scan tool kind of takes over, and this is what would happen on the backside when you're closing the store down that night. So we're going to go ahead and do an update on every single one of these particular manufacturers. So if you notice, it does multiples from the server. So we've got a situation where we're going to actually download all of these particular updates. Then we're going to go ahead and install them. Now, if you notice, it gives us an idea of how far we're done with the update. The Audi update just went to 100%. We downloaded it. Now it's showing it's installing. So the scan tool seamlessly updates. It installs the updates in itself, and then basically lets us know it's installed successfully. So there we have Audi Guided Function Package is installed successfully. We're still downloading the other items. And if you notice, we've got quite the list here going on. It's going to update as many as possible. So what we've got right now is a situation, of course, where we're going to go ahead and do a complete update on the scan tool. Wanted to show you that basically it's going to take some time because we got a lot of updates going on here. The updates can be pretty massive. And those updates, hey, face it, you don't want to do them while you're waiting to work on a car. So let's do the update, schedule it on a Monday night. One person in the shop ought to be the guy that goes ahead and gets the updates ready to go. You can see how easy it is to do. The store manager can do it, anybody can do it. And all we have to do is get the scan tool functioning, doing the updates, and it does it all on its own. So we'll go ahead and get you the progress here. Remember, the only kicker here is going to be how quick is your internet service. If you have better internet service, it's going to go faster. If your service is slower, it's going to take some time, but it's going to be done by the time you get in the next morning, pretty much no matter how big the updates are. It goes pretty rapidly. Now, if we go back to the scan tool screen, you can see our progress so far. We've got quite a few of them updated and at 100%, and we're still working on the others. So we're going to kind of let this thing run through, and then we're going to come back and show you how you can see that you have all the updates in. Okay, it took us about 10 minutes to do the complete update with some large files, so not a problem. If you notice, it comes up in the morning when you get back. It's going to tell you software has been successfully installed, and basically you just hit continue, and then basically you're done. Now, if you notice, software update now does not show any updates required. We could click on it. It's going to refresh it because there could have been some updates possibly that came through while we were doing the update, but in this case there isn't. We're all set, ready to go. So this scan tool is fully updated, ready to go ahead and fix some serious car issues.
Yep. So, obviously Tom was, showing you the easy button on getting those updates into the tool. He shows the updates that are available. There have been times when I have looked and I'm about ready to scan a particular model OEM vehicle, and I look and I see there's an update in there. So a lot of times I'll hit that one. I'll just update it real fast before I scan the vehicle. One of the other tremendously great features about our scan tools is it allows you to actually hold multiple versions of the same OEM software. So kind of what I talked about earlier is that there may be an issue where this particular update affected your ability to communicate with a car through a glitch. You can actually, there's that gray box that showed you the version software. If you drop that down, you can pick an earlier version of software and try that. And because especially we've had situations where we've gotten feedback, diagnostic feedback through that function of the tool where guys like, hey, just last week I worked on a 2014 Nissan Altima and I was able to do ABS bleed procedure. I just did the update and now the features in there, but it says failure, and I don't know what happened. And we'll tell them like, all right, well, we'll take a look at that and fix the glitch. In the meantime, if you can, go back to the last version of software and see if it works. And a lot of times they'll say, yeah, it works, even if I use the older version of software. So that's something I wanted to talk about. There was a question in the chat box: will it update load via Wi-Fi? Yes. Tom was using Wi-Fi. He was just connected to the shop's server there, and he was updating the tool wirelessly. He wasn't connected via Ethernet cable or whatever. And I also noted in there, a lot of times I'm driving somewhere to go connect to a car or do something like that, and or maybe when I connect to a car, I see there's updates available. And what I'll do is I will actually update the tool as I drive using my cell phone as a hotspot. When I'm out in the field, if I'm not connected to my home internet, my shop internet, it sees my phone, it'll connect to it automatically. So when I look down, as long as I see that Wi-Fi antenna is connected, sometimes I'll search for updates, go ahead and hit update all and drive, maybe 20, 30 minutes wherever I have to go. And by the time I'm there, all that stuff's updated. So I know that when I go to connect to the car wherever I'm going, that it'll be ready to go with the most updates. So, and I really can't stress enough making sure that your tool has updates. I mean, you pay for them, right? When you buy a tool new, you get the first year, and after that, you get the ability to update the tool, which nowadays with a lot of things we talked about on last month's call, the OEMs with the secure gateway modules, and I know you guys are familiar with that with Jeep products, Nissan, Mercedes, but almost every car has a secure gateway module now. The domestics, Ford, GM, when you connect to a car, you're actually not connecting to the car. You're actually connecting to Ford or General Motors servers first to verify that your tool is a legitimate tool. We register those serial numbers, and this handshake happens between the tool and Ford and GM servers, and then lets you into the car. So if you're not on Wi-Fi and you don't have the most updated tool or certainly a valid subscription, you're going to have a problem. And people are, maybe mad at us. They're like, oh, I used to be able to just do every other year on updates because I'm not seeing all the latest, greatest models. If you're working in the independent world, you're probably not likely seeing 25s, a lot of 2025 vehicles roll into your shop. So, I didn't need to have every update every year. But unfortunately, it's not us that has made those decisions. It's the OEMs that, with the issues of people breaking into cars through the scan tools and things like that, they've had to add security gateway modules, and the tool has to communicate with them, and basically it's like a security guard, right? Letting the scan tool into the system, into the network to be able to communicate with the car. So I've had people ask me, like, I have a little $50 code reader, and I never have to get in the secure gateway module using it. Yes, because it has no bi-directional controls. So read and erase will be a function if you don't have, say, auto auth registration of your scan tool. You can always read and erase scan codes. And so, I should say you can read. Some you can erase, some you can't clear, if you will. So making sure that you have that ability of if you have a ProLine level scan tool, that thing's registered. with auto auth so that you can get into these cars. So, like I said, you got auto auth for Nissan, Chrysler, Stellantis, whatever you want to call it, and Mercedes, but Hyundai and Kia are going to NASDAQ, so you're gonna have to get NASDAQ credentials to get on a Hyundai Kia, and a lot of the OEMs have it in the background. It's just your tool has to be connected to Wi-Fi. It has to have an active subscription for them to let you in into the car. So really, really important that you're connected to Wi-Fi and your tool is updated. All right. Any questions on that? Please pop them in the chat box. So the last thing we're going to talk about is a diagnostic process. And if any of you have attended training as I do, I attend as much training as I can possibly get throughout the year from a lot of the trainers that you guys probably know of, some of the World Pack guys, CTI, all these guys that are out there. And it's something that's come about is establishing a very set regimented diagnostic process. And I utilized this especially in the last 4 years where I was doing some work with General Motors as a trainer and then also as a factory troubleshooter. And, they'd send me out to, somewhere to look at a vehicle. And, you put me on a plane, send me to Montana, end up at a dealership. You go in there and the network is down in the car. They've got a bunch of U codes and all this stuff. And, people are thinking it needs this module replaced, a wiring harness replaced. And in the process of following a simple diagnostic process, I found that the car had a bad alternator. And it wasn't even a bad alternator as far as that it wasn't charging. The alternator had a bad diode, which was allowing AC ripple to get into the network and cause a bunch of communication issues. And I felt bad sometimes for the technicians because, of course, maybe their service manager wanted to rip them apart. Like, really, we called this guy out here, and it's literally got a bad diode and alternator. And but if you don't follow a diagnostic process to look for the most basic things, a lot of times you can get way ahead of yourself and get down a rabbit hole, as they say, and into things. So I followed this diagnostic procedure to a T, right? Every time, every car. And I'll explain why. So the very first step I do is I walk the scan tool out to the parking lot to the car. Okay. Key on, no starting the engine, and I check and I look at a full OBD2 health report, right? And there's going to be a reason I'm going to explain this why in a couple of steps, why I don't start the engine at that time. I look at the health report. I look at the issues in the car. If there are diagnostic codes present, the first thing I do is look at freeze frame data. What was happening when that code was set, right? If you have certain codes set and things like that, I need to know, was this car at idle? Was this car, under power? Was this car, you can get a lot of data. It used to be there was only about 8 parameters when OBD2 first came out. It was like engine speed, load, vehicle speed, fuel trim status, things like that. Now, almost every data PID that's available on a modern car you can get in freeze frame data. So again, if you get a car that comes in and it's got a particular problem, and say the code was set, because that's what freeze frame data has, right? It stores the data when that code was turned on and set in the computer, right? In the ECM. It says what was happening at that time. Well, if the car was going 47 miles an hour in 4th gear with 41% engine load, and you're trying to recreate the problem with it idling in the bay, might not be successful in recreating the customer's problem. So freeze frame data, extremely important in setting the parameters. I'm going to go out when I do test drive this car, and I'm going to try and recreate what was happening again to see if I can get the failure to happen a second time. That's really important. So my next step is, I still haven't started the car yet, is I go into data in Scan Tool, and anything that does temperature on the car, also known as a thermistor, I'm gonna open up at this time. ECT, IAT, if it has a cylinder head temperature, ambient temperature, and a lot of modern cars are equipped with evaporator temperature sensors. And I'm going to look at them, right? And the reason why I do that without the car running, and again, this is also assuming the engine has been off for 3 hours or more, which is usually a condition that I request to before I'm going to look at any car for a drivability issue is you need to drop it with me, and I need to have it whether you drop it the night before or early in the morning so that I can let it sit and I want to look at the car cold, if you will, right? So that as long as that thing's been off about 3 hours or more, all those temp sensors, all those temp sensors should be about even, right? ECT, IAT, cylinder head temperature. Now you may have, ambient may be higher than the intake air temperature or something like that, or maybe intake air temperature is higher than ambient because the car is black. It's sitting in the middle of the parking lot with no shade. So underneath the hood of a black car, it's hotter. But you're looking at about a 5, maybe 7% difference at the most, right? If one is off, it can be an indication of what you had. And I have seen so many problems with vehicles. You think about an engine coolant temperature sensor. If it goes high, right? Let's say it shorts out, and in the case of it shorting out, it reports high, 200 and something degrees. I've seen cars coming in misfiring, and guys are swapping coils, putting injectors in the car. They're chasing this misfire, and what the car is, it's actually the computer is compensating. They think the car is overheating, so it's doing that cylinder deactivation, right? And it's shutting the engine down. And now so there's nothing actually wrong with the car from the misfire standpoint and parts associated with it. It's the way the ECM is programmed to fight that overheating process, right? Limp mode, if you will. Okay. Same thing, intake air temperature sensor, right? You possibly have one that's really high. Of course, that can affect the running conditions of the car. Cylinder head temperature, going back to what an engine coolant temperature sensor would be, right? Ambient and evaporator temperature sensors. I've seen situations where people are chasing inoperative HVAC or various other functions with with the car, and the problem is that the ambient air temperature sensor is shorted out, and they can either go real low or real high, like a number that couldn't possibly be, right? You'll look at I've looked at an ambient air temperature sensor using this procedure and seen it's at minus 88 degrees. Well, I mean, I don't know. Did we somehow get transported to Neptune? Because how's it minus 88? I'm wearing shorts right now. That's impossible. So, people are turning on their AC, or they're doing this, or evaporator temperature sensor, same situation, requesting 60 degrees, which in most cars is like low temp, and then their AC doesn't come on. And then they bring it in, and guys are, I don't have power at the AC compressor, and they're getting involved in chasing down wiring diagrams. And all that happened was somebody put a Pepsi up on the dash, and they spilled it, and they cleaned all the Pepsi off the top, but eventually it got down into the ambient air temperature sensor and then got into the connector and caused a bunch of problems, corrosion. Maybe it shorted out the sensor. So I can't tell you how many cars I fixed with this, or I've found the problems, especially with engine coolant temperature sensors. You can even, on a lot of cars, unplug the engine coolant temperature sensor and watch it go to a different reading. It'll go to a reading that doesn't make any sense, right? Unplug it. Maybe it says it's 91 degrees right now. You unplug it, and all of a sudden it'll go to 190, or some in some cases a really low number. Again, it could be a broken wire, but at least it gives you a game plan of going, well, I have to start with that, right? Because the engine coolant temperature sensor on most cars is the alpha male sensor. Almost everything, whether it's fuel strategies or running strategies, are done off of the engine coolant temperature sensor, right? We have a vehicle that's overheating, that car is going to start acting really weird, right? So assuming all that stuff's great, if there is a problem, I want to try and test drive this problem, right? So I'm going to test drive this, and I'm going to try and duplicate any customer concerns. Again, going back to my freeze frame data, I'm going to look at what the data parameters are, and I'm going to try and mimic it to the best I possibly can. Again, if it said that it set that code at 47 miles an hour, I'm not going to just drive around the parking lot at 15 miles an hour making turns. I'm going to try and take it out on the road where I can get it up to that speed, recreate the problem, recreate the load, and see if whatever happened for the customer that caused that, I can duplicate it, right? Again, not mimicking what caused it. Nowadays, we're told what happened at the time that this failure happened, what the car was doing. So we have no way of not guessing and going, I just can't duplicate it. No problem found, and shipping it down the road, or telling the customer when it happens again, bring it back. We have the ability to hopefully try and recreate the problem based on what their driving conditions were. If there is any kind of drivability issue, uh, first thing that I'll do is do a volumetric efficiency calculating with graphing data. So I'm going to look at the IAT, I'm going to look at the mass airflow sensor, and I'm going to look at engine speed, and I'm going to note those. I like to put them on a graph, and I just set the record button on the scan tool, and then I drive the car around, and then I come back in, and I'm not going to tell you who to use, but if you Google volumetric efficiency calculator, you can find a bunch of them online, and you just enter those parameters from your test drive in, and it'll tell you if you have a volumetric efficiency problem. So that could be a million things, right? You could have a compression problem. You could have the car jump timing. You could have a problem like your mass airflow sensor is not reading correctly, right? That can be the first sign. If you have a volumetric efficiency problem, first thing I would do is look at my mass airflow and try and determine if my mass airflow is reading correctly, right? Because again, the engine is whether it's the time of the injectors being on and the firing of the spark and all that stuff, a lot of it is based on the volumetric efficiency of the engine itself, right? So very, very important, right? Because again, you can you take it out, and that engine, an engine is a giant air pump, right? So if you have a compression problem, and it's a 6-cylinder engine, you're going to have roughly, give or take, about a 15% loss of volumetric efficiency. So a lot of normally aspirated engines are going to fall into that 90 to 95% efficiency rating when new. They can get a little worse as they age and get high mileage. But if you're looking at an engine that has a 68 or 70% volumetric efficiency during a test drive, I need to look at an engine mechanical situation, assuming my math is reading correctly. So that gets you in the diagnostic arena you need to be in faster, right? You're not going to be chasing. I probably don't want to look for a misfire. I probably don't want to start, getting into spark and fuel. I probably want to, try and maybe do what do you call it, relative compression test or something. If you're working on a Ford or some of the models that have built-in power balance tests, go right into that. See if I find, no, look, cylinder 7 is my problem here. So then maybe you do an actual, manual compression test, right? And it just gets you into the area that you need to be for diagnostics as fast as you possibly can without chasing your tail. So the next step, because there was some, there we go. So and this one, I can't tell you how important this one is pull into the bay and do a battery test, right? First, we'll talk about the battery first, right? So the battery test is so important on a modern car. Why? What does every car have nowadays on the negative battery terminal? They have a battery sensor. That battery sensor is controlled and sends the information to the ECM, right? So the engine control module is now the voltage regulator, okay? And what tends to happen, right, is as the battery gets weak, the engine control module, right, is controlling the alternator to, pump up when the car gets going, and is, starting to have the alternator do more work because the battery is getting weaker, right? So really, really important that you test the source of the electrical power, okay? Because you can have quite a bit of problems with modern cars because of that issue that now we are reporting battery life back to the car, right? There's a thing that we refer to as load shed. And what happens is the car starts making determinations on what's important that it needs the power for. If the battery gets weak enough, it can start shutting down non-critical systems of the car. What might those be, you might say? Things like a sunroof, things like a power seat, um, HVAC and radio controls, right? I realize that, if you're in Arizona in the summer, HVAC might be a truly critical component, okay, but it's not in the reality of things, right? What do we need? We need enough power to fire the fuel pump, to turn the fuel pump on and have ignition, and things like headlights and wipers are always going to work because you could be running in the rain, you could be driving at night. Um, but I've seen it where people have been chasing their tail, trying to figure out why a display on the radio doesn't work or the nav doesn't work. And I always say, did you ever bother checking the battery? No. So battery state of health is really important. And then the second thing is the alternator, right? And a lot of times you're thinking about, output, charging output at, at normal and load conditions. Yeah, that's great. You want to do that too. But the other thing that I look for is the ripple coming out of the alternator. Again, these modern cars are on a network, whether it's CAN high, CAN low. We won't get into all the networks. But if you have a diode, right? So an alternator produces AC signal, and those diodes are a one-way check valve. They convert it to DC, and so that it comes out of the alternator into the vehicle's electrical system as direct current, which is what we need. If one of those diodes goes bad, we can bleed some AC signal out into the car. So some of the symptoms with that could be network problems, because the network will start to shut down. AC ripple is noise in an electrical system, and it's like fingers on a chalkboard to the network. It just starts to shut the car down, right? So you'll have modules go silent and tune out. They're like, I'm done, I'm out, can't listen to this, right? The other problem you could have is you could slowly kill a battery. I've had this a couple times where someone said to me, "Man, every 6 months we got to put a battery in this car. Like these X brand batteries must be junk. We need to get me an AC Delco, get me a this. We'll switch brands, we'll do this." But what's happening is if you got that bad diode, if you just do a charging system alternator test, yeah, you might see that you're getting X number of amps. It's going up to 14 volts when the alternator's running. You think everything's great, but you're not checking for that AC ripple. What happens is that AC comes out and it can actually slowly, especially if, obviously if it's a regular lead acid battery, boil some of the water out of it, and then it slowly kills that battery. So really important that you do those two things. Can't tell you how many times I've had that, and I've had a couple of really good techs chasing their tail, and the car needed a battery. Now they were flabbergasted. They're like, I don't understand. I drove it into the bay. You drove it into the bay. We did this. We did that. Yeah, because the car is preserving the battery for as long as it can. Right? That's what modern cars have the ability to do until it's absolutely dead. You guys are probably well aware, especially if you're an older guy like me, right? I'm going to be 54. I remember, cars would give you that warning, right? You go to start the car one time and you get the vroom, 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 and you're like, I'm probably going to need a battery soon. Nowadays, it just happens. You just go to start the car one day and there's nothing. And unless you got a jump box, that thing's getting towed. And that's because the car is milking that thing. It's able to do that as long as possible. Solid visual inspection. Can't tell you how many things I've ever found with visual inspection, especially back when I was a dealer tech. Car comes in, it's got a bunch of problems, weird electrical problems. Look in, new aftermarket alarm, trailer hitch wiring, obviously audio equipment, right? Looking around for signs of animal damage. You open up the hood of a car and there's nuts everywhere. Obviously, there's some kind of a rodent type animal living in there. And I mean, I had a brand new, under 6 month old car came in for service, and the lady had a bunch of problems. And literally, she had a rodent living there, and it had been eating the coil wires to the ignition coils. It had literally chewed through a couple of the coil wires. If you know that there's been recent repairs, whether you talk to the customer or that you look and see that anything seems to be out of the ordinary. I've worked on cars that have had all kinds of weird problems. Talk to them. I had a timing belt put on 3 months ago. And then what you find is that they didn't route the wiring harness back the exact way that it came. They kind of just did what they had to do. Those little plastic clips that go over studs broke. So rather than properly maybe route it with some wire ties or something, they just kind of let it dangle, and now the wiring harness was pulled a pin out, gave inconsistent contact with a certain sensor or something. Look around. Your eyes are your best tools. And then I think the best thing is, and I learned this from the famous trainer Jim Morton, is, you got to try and determine what system you think is the cause, right? He called it getting into the diagnostic funnel, right? And, getting as much information, getting into the right funnel as fast as you can, right? Looks like I have an ignition problem if you're chasing a misfire, right? It looks like I have an engine mechanical problem. I knew that because of my volumetric efficiency was off during the test drive. Could I possibly have a control issue from another sensor? Yeah, right. That's where you go, and then you're just going to follow, your diagnostic steps from shop information to try and do. So basically, what it is you got to start doing general tests or the simple tests before you start getting into pinpoint tests. That's one of the biggest problems I see is that guys, they want to break out their meter or their scope and they want to start testing this and look at signals of this. 9 times out of 10, it's probably a simple problem. Voltage drop or a bad battery or bad this. And really, it's quite simple. So, and then the last thing is, I see a lot of times that people, they get a car come in and say it's a misfire and say they got P0304, cylinder 4 misfire, and they're like, oh, I got a burnout coil. And, they're like, oh, it needs a coil. Maybe I'll recommend all four spark plugs. Great. That's awesome. Okay. Why do you think one coil went bad? I mean, could it be a bad part? Sure. But do you think that there's an underlying cause in cylinder number 4 that could be causing that coil to work harder and burn out faster than the others? I mean, they all have the same number of cycles on them, give or take. Why did one coil go bad over the others? I would start wondering, do I have a lean condition in this thing? Do I have a fuel starvation? Do I possibly have a plugged up fuel injector, right? You're going to fix the car probably and send it down the road, right? And the customers are like, oh, yeah, the light went out and I don't have that misfire anymore. Well, what's going to happen is 4 months later, the car's going to come back and coil number 4 is going to be burned out again. And they'll be like, you're going to start blaming the parts guy. The parts, oh, this XYZ brand coil is the problem. No, you fix the symptom, not the root cause. So, think about it. When you're replacing a part, especially something where like a coil, where one went bad. Why did that one go bad? Why did just one go bad? There's likely an underlying cause. So we're just about out of time. I kind of yapped my face off today, but hopefully you guys learned something today. Again, there's a question in the you want to put it in the chat box or email me techquestions@launchtechusa.com. I will answer your questions. Again, if you're having a problem right now, you probably don't want to email that. You want to call the call center. I just want to stress that. So if you got a question specifically about something, that you have time to get an answer, email me. But if you're having a problem live with your tool, you want to call the call center. So there is our code AVI10. If you guys want to purchase anything, you can go to LaunchTechUSA or avidemand.com. Get 10% off your purchases. So anything whether you're looking for updates, some of our add-on tools, we have our Treadmaster, we have our BST 360 Bluetooth battery tester. You get 10% off anything you buy there. We've got our new TPMS tool coming out in mid-June. So maybe you wait for that and you'll be able to get that out there. So thank you guys. Really appreciate your time. And good luck out there. Stay safe, and hopefully you make lots of money.